Thank you so much, Darshana Auntie, for joining us on the podcast today. It really means a lot to have you here with us. Before we get into the questions, I'd love if you could take a minute or two to introduce yourself and your family.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all. And thank you, V Embrace, as well. This is, I think, the first podcast I'm doing with V Embrace. So I'm very happy. Kudos to me, na yay. So, just to introduce myself, my name is Darshana Merchant, and we are a family of three. I live in Massachusetts, and I have a 26-year-old son on the autism spectrum.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. So let's rewind a bit to when things first started to feel a little different. When did you first start noticing signs that your son was neurodivergent?
Sure. So before I answer that question, I would love to take a moment to tell our viewers that or listeners that I am not an expert by any stretch of imagination. I'm a parent just like you. Also, some of the information I may talk about can be outdated because my son is 26 and it's been a long time, 23 years since he was first diagnosed. And the field has come, a long way since then. I will also be referring to the ASD folks as autistics, identity first language, and this is based on my son's preference. Uh, so no respect intended for if you're a believer in person centered language and prefer to say person with autism.
Mm-hmm.
So also one third point I want to make is that ASD is called a spectrum for a reason. There are many commonalities among autistics, but there are also vast differences. Some of the community is not into making friends, whereas other love friendships and outgoing. Some have sensory needs, while others are fairly regulated. Some struggle with comorbid conditions, while others do not. So, whatever I say in this podcast is based on my experiences with my son. So, I'm going to be speaking through that lens. There may be things that you can relate to, and there may be things that you cannot. But I hope that everyone can relate to the struggle of our children go through on a daily basis. So to answer your question, when did I start first noticing something was different for my son? Uh, though his official diagnosis was at the age of 3.5, um, I noticed something was off when he was like 8, 9 months old. I just thought that his responses to the external stimuli, like calling out his name, uh, was a little bit slow. And then, his peers. I just thought his responses were slow. So I took him to a local pediatrician who assured me, boys will be boys. They develop late. He's just a bit so that's okay. No need to worry. And I wanted to believe it. Uh, so we did nothing for the next 2 years, and I'll always, regret that for sure. But then it became very, very clear in the next couple of years that he was not meeting his developmental milestones. And so, at the age of 3, we were referred to a speech and occupational, therapy assessments, who in turn referred us to the regional center where he was diagnosed. Um, by the time some of the ASD symptoms were very apparent, like delayed language, receptive and expressive language, repetitive behaviors, lack of social awareness or wanting to make friends, like atypical play with toys, like lining them up instead of playing, no imaginative play. After the diagnosis, it all basically made sense. So in a way, it was a relief. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, completely. Thank you so much for sharing. What was the diagnosis journey like for your family, and how did you first feel?
Whew, how does it feel when you see a report from the psychologist? There are no words for it. Even if you're expecting it, just written like that in black and white is absolutely devastating. Just feels like someone has reduced, your child to these 4 pages of report. It's really gut wrenching, is all I can say, and I'm sure all the parents who have been through that can probably attest to that. Then comes the guilt, and it is never ending. uh, the what ifs are like a black hole that one can go through. and stay there. Should I have not eaten something during pregnancy? Should I have eaten something or not eaten something? Maybe I didn't give him enough food, or the vaccines to blame. Should I have played with him more? And the questions just go on and on and on. Everybody goes through that, I believe. I mean, eventually I did come out of that. You have to. You don't have a choice. When we met the regional center psychiatrist, he was expecting us to basically, bawl our eyes out. But my first question, like, okay, so what do I do next? How can I make this better? Where can I go for intervention? Where can I read about this? And remember, these are the pre Googling days, pre social media days. So I had to read books. I read so many of them. Every one of them helped. We did not have to deal too much with information overload like parents do now, because the first instinct is to Google. There's Google this, and then you have like a million hits that you don't know what to do with. There's just too much information. Um, so I mean, at the time, there's also not too much problem with mis and disinformation that is out there, because the information now is so vast that you really don't know whether your reading is something that is a disinformation or is it a misinformation. Where can I go for authoritative sources, stuff like that? It's just, it was out there, it just was not easily available to the parents, which helped a lot. What I did not do well, I mean, it took a while, was the acceptance. uh, I did not want to tell my friends, my family, my acquaintances, and that acceptance also took many, many years. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I felt.
Yeah, I can very much empathize with your situation because I feel like unfortunately there's just so much stigma attached to neurodivergence, and I think now, like you mentioned, there's just so much misinformation and disinformation about it. I think a lot of advice for some reason comes, it's word of the mouth. It's not really factual. It's yeah, very random as well. Can I ask, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced during your son's early development or schooling years?
Sure. So there are two kind of separate questions here: is the developmental challenges and is the schooling year challenges. So the biggest challenge at the very beginning was the lack of knowledge, my personal knowledge about autism. There was no family member, who was autistic. There were no friends whose children were on this autism spectrum. So it took me a while to educate myself about autism, uh, how to understand how my son's mind works, what are the developmental milestones that he can and cannot meet at this point, how to manage behaviors. That was some of the biggest challenges in the beginning. Another big challenge was I was relatively new to the country, to the United States, I mean. So navigating systems like school, regional center, healthcare was a big challenge, because I realized that you do not know what you do not know. And if you do not know, you do not know what questions to ask. And feel sort of intimidated by these authority figures, who seem to know a lot more about your child than you do. Now, and they are now in your child's life. So I feel I may have missed a lot of services, information, because of this problem of being, new to the country and just not able to navigate the system efficiently. Same problem with the school's navigation. Again, being a new immigrant and not knowing how to navigate that. Uh, and as I mentioned before, we don't didn't have the tech tools we have now. So we don't have social media, we didn't have WhatsApp, Substack, Discord, you name it. So it was very difficult to find the community, find your community, who can relate to you. And as a personal characteristic, I'm not a very outgoing person, and neither is my husband. So it was very, very isolating in the beginning. uh, that was one of my biggest challenges. I think the parents in my son's special education preschools were probably my first contact, with in finding help.
Thank you so much for sharing. So, you touched on the preschool and early education teachers, but were there any other key support systems or individuals who made a big difference early on?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, the first my point of contact, sort of, for asking for help, were parents whose kids were in my son's preschool, and they were a huge help. I did not have any family support. There was both my parents, my in-laws, they were all in India, and didn't know what was going on because I had not, told anyone. And even if I did, we very much doubted that they can relate because they're so far away. Uh, and they were not in a position to come and help. So I was on my own pretty much right from the beginning. And to be honest, because of that, I sort of reached out to my son's therapist, his teachers. They became my friends. They genuinely cared for my son and tried their best and tried to help me as well. I remember my son's speech pathologist sharing her materials with me during summer breaks. Year after year, she actually just used to give me, her workbooks and like, here, do what you need to do at home with your son. I particularly remember one incident, and this was when I had an in-home assessment done by a medical professional from an ABA agency that was I was referred to by the regional center. Now this gentleman comes home and asks me, "What are your goals for your son?" That's the first question that comes out of his mouth. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I want him to be normal. I mean, like, I don't know. I want him to develop like typical peers. Like, I don't know. That's my like overarching goal. But if you're asking me what, social emotional goals, so that's what he was asking me. And I was completely like thought I was drowning in this question and like I had no idea. So I happened to mention that to one of the kids' parents, and she said that you come home. I already have a ABA program in action, and I'll show you my materials. So I go to her house, and she had these boxes of materials out for me, and she showed me. See, this is how the programs run. This is how you set goals. This is how you track goals. Da, 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 da. And it just went on, and it was so good. And I was so grateful. It's sort of, I'm like, oh, that's what you wanted. Okay, I get it now. It just, people just help so selflessly, uh, and, very proactively that I was like blown away. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pay this forward. Somebody help me. I want to help somebody else. uh, that Catherine Morris book. People who have done ABA probably know the name. It's called Behavioral Intervention for Children with Autism. It was like the ABA holy grail of the time. So she said, buy this book and work from it. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So that I go home, I buy the book, I read it, cover to cover. I'm like, oh, that's what he wanted. Okay, now I get it. So, even after so many years, I remember how she helped me. It was, just like I sort of opened my eyes, like, oh, wow, that's what you want. Okay. Uh, and it allowed me to, sit in with all his therapies and understand how they're doing things. I mean, it's just that one small act of hers really, opened my world. Also, one of the other things were understanding basic IEP and laws around, least restrictive placement, free and appropriate public education, what is called as FAPE for short, attending in person in first sessions. Remember, there was nothing virtual back then, so it was all in person at in first session and on that. So all that kind of systems really helped me. So it was individuals as well as organizations that were working in the field back then.
Oh my God, thank you so much for sharing. And I absolutely love how you want to pay it forward. But I totally agree with you. Sometimes it's just like, one person's encouragement that can change everything for a family. And I definitely agree with you with that. What did you notice helped you the most when navigating school for your son?
I think advocacy for my son and learning about that, especially, using keywords that educators understand, really helped because you don't look like a klutz in front of them thinking, oh, what are you talking about? So, luckily for me, my son he had behaviors, but not a whole lot. and also his behaviors at school was pretty much same as behavior at home. So it was never a problem that say, oh, he doesn't do it at school, he does it at home. Doesn't do it at home, but he does it at school. I didn't have challenges of that sort, so that was very helpful for me. I should thank him actually for making that easier for me. But I also learned that knowledge is power. You know, for sure. The more you know, the more you equipped you are to advocate for your child.
And when you say advocate, could you also elaborate on that a bit? What did you do? Like, what were some actionable steps you took?
Sure. So, in any IEPs, there are objects and long-term object and short-term goals. So, things like most of the tendencies in special education to have socialization and living skills is given more importance. What I wanted for my son, I could see it at home, is that I wanted them to work on academic goals as well. So I insisted on, that I'm like, you assess him, this is what he can do, excuse me. And that is kind of a nitty gritty of IEP. You can, so they I made them basically add academic goals to his IEP. This was when he was very young. Once he started to become more verbal, and could show more clearly what he can, because he was always verbal to some extent. So he was never non-verbal or unreliable speaker. So once they understood, oh, he can do this, it was much easier later on. But when he was very young, preschool, first grade, second grade, that was the most struggle to get academic goals in there.
Thank you so much. That's perfect. What did you learn during those years that you wish you had known sooner?
If I could turn back the time, uh, I wish I had known sooner how much knowledge helps, if that makes sense. Just knowing something half heartedly, it doesn't work, because people who are in power know what they're doing, and if you don't know what you're doing, you cannot advocate for your child. So navigating the systems and that knowledge, I felt, is absolutely essential, and I wish I had known that sooner. I would have wasted, I think, much less time in trying to basically catch him up to his peers in certain areas. uh, I think I also, looking back, feel that if you think that there is anything, something is off about your child, get early intervention. I wish I had known that sooner, because that 0 to 3 is a very, very crucial time. It's not like you cannot catch up, but it becomes harder as they age, and and the brain is more developed, more and more developed. So I wish I had known. If I wish I had done something after that pediatrician said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong," but I could tell, that there is something wrong. I also learned, but I hope not too late, is that I'm the only one standing between my son and like total despair. Kind of sounds very dramatic when you say that, but think about it for a minute. If the parents give up fighting for their kids, what kind of life does the child have? I mean, unfortunately for us, the world is built for neurotypical people. So our kids have to fight, twice as hard to access this world. And one has to be really a warrior parent for that. So I learned my lesson, but I hope not too late.
And hopefully that does change in the future where it's really a more inclusive world for everybody. But I guess, yes, until then, we do have like a huge role to play as family of neurodivergent people. What do you think were some of the biggest challenges when your son transitioned to adulthood?
Adulthood. Well, adulthood and adult services is a completely different beast. It's like one day you have services and the next day you are just falling off the cliff. For my son, especially once you graduate school, that is. So for my son, he graduated high school at the age of 18. And because he was set on a college path, he did not need the 18 to 22 transition services. So that sort of, reduced my challenge a little. But for him, because he was on college path, we had to navigate the DDS services, which in Massachusetts is Department of Developmental Services. We also had to navigate college, no mean feat. We have to find supports in college. Finding supports in general is challenging, time consuming, and extremely exhausting. Um, and this is also the time that makes you question your decisions as because you're stepping into this big unknown. I cannot tell you how many times, even now, even though he's graduated college as well, I second guess my decisions as to whether I should have done this or done that. Even on whether he should have taken a certain course or not taken a certain course. So that level, you can kind of second guess always. But I tell other parents it is hard to follow my own example is to not worry about it and to not regret whatever decisions you take. But it's hard pill to swallow personally. So that was one of the biggest challenges of adulthood, and I mean the challenges continue because even after you graduate college, he did graduate in chemistry. So he has an undergrad in chemistry. Then he did a biotechnology technician certification course after that. And in spite of having good education, he is working part time, but he's looking for a better job. And for ASD folks, anyway, that's a separate topic by itself. So that I don't want to. It will be another 40 minutes just on that. So I think that's about in nutshell. The challenges, they never stop. They are they're forever.
Perhaps for another episode then. Yeah. So, how did you approach these decisions around college, work, or even independent living?
Uh, so for college, now this was not as troublesome for me because my son had decided on a college path. He wanted to commute, and he had already chosen a major. Uh, I wanted him to stay on campus just to get some independence or, make some friends. But he was absolutely adamant about commuting. And luckily for him, the university was commutable from our house, so that worked. But I think he had the right of it, and it was one of the best decisions we made because it allowed him to a first relax at home. uh, this is very important, especially for kids who are verbal and represent autism in a more milder form, is that they mask a lot in public, and that takes its toll. It's like the moment they are out and about, they switch. So and it's all about masking. So this kind of situation allowed him to relax at home, just be himself. It also allowed us to engage in tutoring, like one-on-one tutoring for courses that were tough for him. I don't think we would have had that sort of flexibility had he been living on campus. Uh, the college disability services also allowed him to take partial course load, uh, and at the same time qualifying as a full-time student for other SSI benefits or anything, or MRC benefits. MRC is the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission. It's like vocational rehabilitation state agency. So it allowed him to do that after he completed his undergrad. I would say a year later, he also completed this certification. So due to his challenges, he was not able to do any internships as he was studying. So that has kind of created a barrier to get a good job in a STEM career, because a lot of it is what did you do in college. I'm like, oh well, he survived. He passed all his courses. Isn't that enough? But it's not. Uh, so in any case, so he's basically struggles to find a new job. He's applying, and currently he works in a pathology lab in a local hospital. So he's pretty much independent in that sense. He can take an Uber. He drives. So he doesn't drive by himself yet, but he drives. He has a license. So he's getting independence. I don't have to do anything for him per se. in terms of his personal care. So that's about, I mean, we take a day at a time or a month at a time now to figure out where are we going next. We have reached a point, where we don't have to worry about IEPs or anything like that. No therapy. He doesn't do any more therapies. So it's a little more easier, a little more, less taxing in a way. But again, because of we are aging, he's an older, so those bring different kind of challenges. So independent living he's independent in that sense. He just doesn't live by himself, which is okay because friendships are hard for him. So he if he's by himself, it's just that he's too isolating, so I'm not too worried about that.
And before I move on to the next question, I'd like to ask a follow up because you touched on a really great point about masking. But what are other things you do additionally to, I guess, help support the exhaustion from that?
Sure. So after he comes home, if he's doing any kind of repetitive behavior or any kind of what do you call it? Forget the name. Maybe sensory related stuff. I let him be. I don't try to stop him doing that. If he's doing any kind of self stimulation, whatever, that's okay. Because I know that he has been masking all this time in college. So if he wants to go, in his room and rock, I don't care. It's okay because that's if that makes him relax. So certain things like that. I remember back in the school, and I didn't even realize that he was doing it since school time. He would come home, and then if I was home, I was working part time at the time, and we would have fights, like blazing rows. So and I'm like, why would you come home and just have a meltdown like that, every single day? And it never occurred to me at the time that imagine being in an environment where you have to constantly pretend to be somebody else. What would that do to your psyche? You are going to have to break down at some point. So that was his outlet. Who is he going to take it out from other than his parents? Basically. But once I understood that, I understood how to deal with it personal on a personal level, to not take it as a personal insult that, oh, you're coming home and fighting with me. So it's not about you. That's what I have to tell yourself. It's not about you, it's about him. Anything that they do is, it's not about you, it's about him. So to understand that, it took me a while to get to that point as well. But now after in college, it was very apparent because college is stressful. I mean, he was by no means a savant or any kind of like academically genius child or kid, or adult, whatever. So even the studies was hard, the language was hard. You have to navigate this whole system of different things. Nobody's really looking out for you like they did in schools. You have to be your own advocate. So all of these things and trying to fit in with people takes its toll. So you have to give them some outlet. So that was some of the things I did. I just back off. You want to do this, go ahead and do that. You want to rock in your room, go ahead. You want to listen to music, whatever you can. I mean, we do that as well, right? If things stress us, we have found a means of doing it. It's just that what an autistic person may think as a relaxing is something that is not a social norm, and that's okay. It took me a while to get here, but that's okay. I'm like, okay, you do you.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. How do you support your son in balancing his independence while still playing the role of a caretaker?
So if for my son, I am his legal guardian, but I do not interfere with any decision he makes regarding his studies, work. uh, Even though I can solve his problem for him, and I can see that I can solve his problem for him, I do not do that for him anymore. I'm sure he has missed some opportunities because of that, but I feel that's okay, because I do want to be his caretaker, but I don't want to make decisions for him. I want him to be responsible for his own decision to the extent possible. I know there are some things that he will not get, and maybe miss out something in life. But with us parents aging, there's going to be a time when we're not going to be there. So it is going to be what it is. So I'm trying to sort of give him more independence that way. For example, he's looking for new jobs, right? So he'll write cover letters and he'll bring it to me for editing, and I'll edit it for him. If he says it's okay, he can send. If not, he thinks, oh, I need to edit my editing, that's okay. uh, I just go with the flow there. He schedules his own meeting with his vocational agency. uh, he'll find support groups on his own. Like, I never say don't do this or do that. uh, Buying clothes, if he asks me, can I need new shoes for this is a very nitty gritty of daily living, but I'm trying to make him independent on in that, because this is your bank balance, do it. That kind of independence we are not there yet. Here, manage your own money, you know what I mean. So the big things is not there yet, but these things, he gets, he has that kind of cognitive level or skill to understand. So we are trying to give him independence that way. uh, our job as a caretaker is sort of keeping him safe, keeping him happy, fed. So that's what I do. I try to, if I see something that's going to be really, really bad decision, I have told him, here, this is what the consequences are. What do you think?
I like that. Thank you for sharing. What does daily life look like now for both you and your son?
Mm, daily life, basically, we all work, I guess. So our daily life, like I mentioned before, we don't do any kind of therapy intensive like that. Um, Usually, it's just going to work, coming back, that sort of thing. It's much, much easier when they are an adult. Whereas if you had asked me this question when he was in, school, I would say, oh gosh, we do da, 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 da. We go to this therapy, that recreation, that swimming. It, it was much more jam-packed schedule, is what I would say. Daily, lots of therapies and things like that, but we are sort of past that. So my son works part-time, he attends social events through the autism resource center that we belong to for adults. He proactively joins online support groups for autistic adults. So since he's independent in his daily living skills, he doesn't need me to help him with that. He'll do his chores around the house, and he does not need any prompting, which I cannot say even for neurotypical adults. That my son will absolutely do whatever his chores are without me asking. So uh, that's basically in a nutshell what our what daily life looks like.
Thank you so much for sharing. And how have friendships or relationships evolved over time for your son?
Well, that would be a very short answer, in that they haven't. It is extremely difficult for my son to develop a friendship as we know of it, as we think of it. He'll participate in any social gatherings. He loves going to the ARC events, the Autism Resource Center events. But once that event is over, he's done. He's home. He once told me, after our many, many discussions over the years about this, is that it is extremely stressful for him to develop or maintain friendships the way I was envisioning. Um, we did like thousands of hours of social skills groups, camps, you name it, and we did it. But nothing created that need. It just taught the skills. And there's a difference. Some people want to make friends, and they just need the social skills to do that. Whereas this is not the question of so much skills. It's that he doesn't feel the need, or it's too stressful for him to maintain something like that. He's very social, in the sense he's polite with his peers in company, whatever. But anything more than that takes too much mental power, and that basically stresses and exhausts him. So it doesn't give him pleasure, like Gus gives us as having friends. So it's always sort of bewildering for him that why I go out and meet my friends like so often. Like what's the need, So for him, I've also come to accept that over after so many years, because I was like, how can you, be alone? But it's like he's alone but not lonely, if that makes sense. Oh yeah.
I think that's just a really good reminder that connection can look different for everybody, but the ones he still has mean that they're still very meaningful. And yeah, so the next question I have is, how do you handle societal stigma or misconceptions around neurodiversity?
Sure. So, well, I have to confess that back then, when he was newly diagnosed, as I mentioned, I did not handle the social stigma as I perceived it. Well, maybe there wasn't one, but how it is. I did not tell any of my friends, family acquaintances. I think the only people I could be open with were parents like me. Uh, but that was on me more than anything else. It was just me, my personality. If I had got out there and advocated for myself, I would have maybe got past the stigma. I am much better handling it now. As the time passed, you get better and better. Some of the misconceptions came from, helpful advices about curing autism. Uh, See that guru, that, go to that temple, that sort of thing. But I think self education, passage of time, and just to what to say to people, when I sort of figured that out myself, I came to terms with it and I was able to educate people as well. So I mean, misconception about neurodiversity is very rampant, because if you or your child or somebody close to you is not affected by a certain disability, there is no way for you to understand fully how that person goes through. My only advice to people is that you come from a place of understanding or trying to learn, instead of you know telling people without parents with whose children are affected by some diagnosis or the other, or what you think is best. So it's more about that, so as long as they come to me, even if they're misguided, but if they want to really learn, I'm okay with that. You can educate people who are on the fence, but if you already made up your mind about something, there's no way anybody can change it for you, and those people I don't worry about.
And what advice would you give to parents just starting this journey?
Ooh, okay. Well, if you are a parent of a newly diagnosed child, my advice to you is do what you need to do. Cry, lament at their unfairness, and get it out of your system, because you have work to do. You are about to enter a marathon, and whatever the diagnosis is, you are going to have to learn it, understand it, and kind of get to work to find help and resources. Nowadays, our first instinct when we hear something, it like is to Google it, or now ask ChatGPT about it. uh, I know I cannot stop anyone from doing that, but please, please read authoritative research on this. In other words, please read books written about it. I cannot emphasize this enough. There is just too much information online, and it doesn't make sense when you have newly diagnosed. No, when your child is newly diagnosed, you just don't know what to do. I would say start with the books. Go to your library, look online. There are so many parents' blogs and whatnot out there now, and they all recommend things. So I would definitely advise on that. Excuse me. If you are seeking any kind of biomedical intervention, make sure you do it under a doctor's guidance and not try something on your own. Again, with misinformation and disinformation, this field, especially biomedical interventions for autistic people, it's just rampant. People just write whatever, so remember, medical treatments and supplements, whatever you give, have consequences. They are not benign interventions. Lots of these supplements are not regulated, so it is important that you have a medical professional to consult. My third advice, I guess, is dealing with schools. Know when to insist on getting your way at school, and when to realize that it is a lost cause and look for alternatives. Would you rather spend money hiring a lawyer to get the school district to comply, or would you rather spend that money in maybe homeschooling or getting after school therapies? Uh, that's for you to decide. I'm not saying not to hold school districts accountable. You should, but at the same time, do not waste your child's time. If he or she is unhappy at school, for a very very long time, I don't think things are going to get better for them, unless something drastic, good change happens at your school. Maybe it may be time to look for school homeschooling, or time to fight for out of district placement. I understand that this is a very generic advice, because every household is unique and everybody's situation is very unique. So do what you think is best for your circumstances. Fourth one is trying therapies. Think person centric. Just because ABA is the most conventional and insurance recognized, therapy does not mean it is suitable for your child. See, this is ABA is just an example. There could be, something else. Maybe is the best for your child. I don't know. You have to know, but see what your child's sensory needs are. And this is very important for parents of newly diagnosed children, because a big part of autism involves, sensory impaired sensory systems. So people with involved sensory needs will tell you that not satisfying them to the extent possible is a recipe for disaster. It will decide the success or failure of your child. So you have to really be a detective and figure out the sensory needs early on. And communication, communication. I cannot emphasize this enough. Communication matters. However, your child can communicate, try to discover that method as early as you can. It doesn't have to be a verbal speech, but know that if they can communicate in any way, a lot of behavior issues can be avoided or dealt with effectively if you can establish some sort of communication channel. Presume competence. This is the key. We didn't know that at my time, honestly, but now things are different. I feel, you know, everybody should think that their child can do this. If your child is not learning something, the onus is not on the child. It is on you, it is on the schools, and it is on other authority figures, in his life. Start from the place where think, my child can do this. How can I make it happen? And the solutions, will come automatically. And the lastly, please take care of yourself and avoid burnouts. Uh, I know enough people now to know who have ended up with their own health issues long term, because of the stress of dealing with, a special needs child. So I would say do what it takes to, relax, take care of yourself, because as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a marathon. You're going to be in it for a while. It is important that you take care of yourself. So I would say that's probably in a nutshell my advice to uh, newly, diagnosed parents. Oh yeah, one thing, to find your community, very helpful.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. What has parenting a neurodivergent adult taught you about yourself?
Being a parent of a neurodiverse child and now an adult, I think taught me a lot about empathy and sympathy both. It also taught me acceptance. I think the world is hard enough to navigate even when you have no issues, or when you are neurotypical. So to understand that neurodiverse population deals with this every single day, day in, day out, imagine how hard it must be for them. It taught me that, and I think that sort of worldview extends to other underrepresented, communities of our society. I think I'm a much changed person over the years because of that. You just develop so much, a non-judgmental attitude. I also, there's developed that over the years to not judge people because I didn't want to be judged. So it's our first instinct is to, oh, sure. Even within the neurodiverse community, find sometimes parents judge each other, and that I found really surprising. I'm like, we are all in the same boat. Just it's like, oh, your child, is verbal, so his problems are lesser than my child. I'm like, because who is not unreliable skill. I mean, what are you talking about? For everybody, whatever their functioning level, that's important to them. That's their level. So you cannot say that he has had easier time because he talks, as opposed to somebody who is an unreliable speaker. So stop judging, each other. I learned that slowly, but I feel that I'm at a much better place in that sense, and I advise people to, go that route as well.
Are there any books, tools, therapies, or routines that have worked for your family?
Absolutely. So over the years, we did many therapies. We did, speech therapy, occupational therapy, ABA, floor time, vision therapy, and also some non-conventional therapies like visual special skills training. We did social skills groups. We did Linda Bell reading programs. Those fast forward scientific learning programs for improving auditory processing, and lots and lots and lots of biomedical interventions. They all helped, each and every one of them. Apart from that, like I mentioned, I did like tons of books. Books about pivotal response training, floor time, RDI, you name it, and I was reading it at the time. Plus, many books written by parents of kids on the spectrum, as well as other autistics. Back in the day, there were not that many people writing autistics. I mean, the most prominent was, Temple Grandin and Donna. What's her last name? I forget. Tito Mukhopadhyay. So now there are more books coming out, who are all artistic themselves are writing, which is great. I read a lot of books about, actually, I read all the books written by Michelle Garcia Winner, who writes about social thinking. Wonderful books to read if you haven't. I also read books about theory of mind, uh, which is a big concept in autism about perspective taking, the science behind it. Basically, by it was pioneered by Simon Baron Cohen. He was a researcher out of either Oxford or Cambridge, I forget. Uh, the one in England, I mean, the Oxford University. So he used to run that program, and it is a one very fascinating read on how like theory of mind works. Uh, I also read the Me book by O. Ivor Lowas, and this is way back when. He's basically the father of ABA. I wouldn't recommend it now because there are a lot of ideas kind of outdated in that one. But if anyone is really interested in how ABA came to be, hit that book, the Me book. That's the name of the book. Is actually on the Internet Archive for people to read freely. So that's in a nutshell. I've read many more, but I don't remember the names of all of them.
That's definitely so helpful. You listed so many, but yeah, thank you. What do you think are some hopes you have for your son's future?
Well, I think my hopes for my son's future are probably the same as any parents have their for their child, typical or not typical, that they be safe and happy. So that's what I feel. That I hope that he, that happens for him. We'll try as far as we can. We'll try to make it happen. So, wish us luck.
Most definitely, yes. If you could go back to your younger self and speak to yourself as a young parent, what would you say?
I think it's kind of ties up with the same question as what did I learn over the years, that I had known sooner. Uh, Basically, if I could go and back and talk to myself, I would definitely tell my younger self not to care about what others think and to get on with helping my son a little sooner. That would be my advice in a nutshell.
Thank you. And for just to end everything, is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't touched on so far?
Sure. So I think one of the things that you had mentioned before about what does the role a community plays offline or online in my journey, and I think I would like to share that because I cannot stress how much help offline and online parent support groups have been for me to keep me sane. I will show my age when I say that I first met Meena uh, in 2001 on Yahoo Groups. Back in the day, there was Yahoo Groups, and we met on that. And it was so nice to see that there are so many parents out there like me. Gina was another organization that really helped me find my community, a place to seek advice and make lifelong friends. That friendships that basically transcend distances, and sometimes just a place to vent. So that is another thing I want to share is that I think, I mean, we can talk for hours on how long this journey has been and continues to be, but I'm not going to go there. My hope for parents is that they help their children to the best of their ability and never give up. Remember, you have had it, if you have had it bad, your children are dealing with much worse every day, and they still manage to be optimistic. The least you can do is follow their example. If anybody has any individual questions, they can feel free to reach out to Meena, or we embrace. And Meena, I'm sure will get back to me. And all the best for everyone who's going to listen or watch. If there are any Star Wars fans out there, I want to say, may the force be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, truly, thank you for everything you've shared today. Your story is going to touch so many hearts. Today's conversation was really insightful for me personally because we talked about everything from your own personal experiences to advice you would give to other young parents. And I hope it is also insightful for others watching it today. So thank you so much for opening about your experience today, Darshana Auntie.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Beyond the Blue. I hope you found our conversation insightful and informative. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with anyone who might benefit from it. We can't wait to have you back next time. Until then, stay curious and take care.